So I made like the craziest mistake ever. So what you're looking at right now is my fuel pressure gauge in the S10. Turn the key on. You'll see I've got fuel pressure. It's about 4 pounds pressure. And watch this. I found this out by happenstance. Every time I hit the brakes, that clicking you're hearing is the relay for the fuel pump. Every time I hit the brake pedal, it interrupts the power. Past day or so, I spent a little bit of time working on this thing. I installed that new 34, well, new to me, 34 millimeter front sway bar, new sway bar links, and I replaced the 30-year-old 200,000 mile front brake hoses, which were about to blow. Yeah. Trust me, they look worse in person. Anyways, for the longest time I've been battling an idle issue with this thing. And I'm like, man, sometimes the RPM will pick up at idle when it's hot. And other times, I'll barely want to idle. And I could never get a good consistent idle. Didn't matter if it was cold, didn't matter if it was hot. And I'm like, man, if I'm sitting at a light, it would just act funny. 2 different carburetors, same issue. Obviously, it's not the carburetor. In my idiocracy of doing my fuel pump wiring, let me get a little light here. That's your fuel pump relay. Basically, I don't know if I can't recall if I bypassed it, and I went and I sourced a 12-volt key. 12-volt key source, and then I put an inline fuse, another inline fuse, and a inline kill switch as a security measure. Long story short, every time I hit the brakes, it interrupts the circuit to the fuel pump, and the fuel pump cuts out every time I hit the brakes. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to figure out what I tapped into, because I swore I tapped into the 12-volt key. Yes, it's 12-volt hot when the key is on, except for when you hit the brakes, it goes off. It takes a big man to admit a mistake. I made a mistake. It takes an even bigger man to admit it to an audience of thousands of people he doesn't even know, for the sole purpose of, don't do what I did. Moral of the story, I'm going to go to the fuse box, go to one of the ignition sources, and my 12-volt key will go right from the fuse box. And I'm going to run an inline fuse to the trigger wire, even though the fuel pump wiring is basically factory. I swore I tried to make everything function on this setup as stock as possible, like the 2.8. I wanted the fuel pump to work just like the 2.8, but for some reason, if I remember it correctly in the wiring, you had to have like the factory distributor hooked up, and the distributor had something to do with the fuel pump. Guys that are more versed and well educated in this conversation and type of thing, you guys can come in and chime in and correct me and correct everybody else. But hey, well, I figured out my idle issue. It had nothing to do with the carburetor. It had nothing to do with the fuel pressure settings. It was the simple fact that every time I stepped on the brake, shut my fuel pump off. Crazy stuff. My mistake. I learned a lesson. You guys can laugh, as long as we're learning something here. All right. But hey, I gotta admit, that big 34 millimeter sway bar on this thing and a new set of hoses, I got a better pedal, a little bit better of a pedal, because I did flush the brakes out. And this thing, it sticks to the road a little bit better, especially with them wide tires. Alright, that's enough rambling. Hopefully I'll get another one out to you before Thanksgiving. If not, you guys have a wonderful family, or a wonderful holiday with you and your family. Take it easy.